Imagine a world without airplanes, cargo ships, or highways. Thousands of years ago, the greatest trade network on Earth stretched across towering mountains, scorching deserts, and endless grasslands. Historians would later call it the Silk Road, but it was far more than a single road. It was a vast network of routes linking China, India, Central Asia, Persia, and the Roman Empire. Along these paths traveled silk, spices, jade, precious metals, glassware, horses, and countless ideas that would shape the course of human history. Yet behind this incredible network stood an empire that many people have never heard of. Hidden between the world's greatest civilizations, it became the bridge connecting East and West. This is the story of the Kushan Empire, a forgotten kingdom whose influence reached far beyond its borders. The story begins not with a mighty empire, but with a people searching for a new future. Around the 2nd century BCE, a nomadic group known as the Yuezhi lived across the vast grasslands of what is now northwestern China. They were skilled horse riders who moved with the seasons, raising livestock and trading with neighboring communities. Their lives were closely tied to the open plains, where horses grazed freely and families lived in portable felt tents that could be moved whenever the tribe migrated. Life changed dramatically when the powerful Xiongnu Confederation expanded across the region. Faced with increasing pressure and conflict, the Yuezhi were forced to leave their ancestral homeland. Rather than disappearing from history, they began one of the most significant migrations of the ancient world. Families packed their belongings, gathered their herds, and set out on a long journey westward. The road ahead would take them across rugged mountains, dry deserts, and unfamiliar lands, testing their determination with every step. After years of migration, the Yuezhi reached the fertile region of Bactria, located in parts of present-day Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. Rich farmland, flowing rivers, and thriving towns offered opportunities they had never known before. Instead of continuing their nomadic way of life, many gradually settled, built communities, and learned from the cultures already living there. They adopted new farming methods, expanded trade, and began transforming themselves from wandering tribes into a settled civilization. Among the Yuezhi clans, one leader rose above the others. His name was Kujala Katphizes, and through diplomacy, leadership, and strategic alliances, he united the tribes into a single kingdom during the 1st century CE. This marked the birth of the Kushan Empire. Few could have imagined that this newly unified kingdom would soon become one of the wealthiest and most influential powers in the ancient world. Standing at the crossroads of Asia, the Kushans were perfectly positioned to control the trade routes that connected distant civilizations. As merchants from China, India, Persia, and the Mediterranean traveled through their lands, the foundations of a remarkable empire had been laid, setting the stage for one of history's greatest stories of trade, culture, and connection. Taxila was unlike almost any other city of its time. Located where major trade routes met, it welcomed travelers from every corner of the ancient world. Merchants from China arrived with fine silk, while traders from India carried spices, cotton, and precious gemstones. From the west came merchants bringing Roman glassware, silver, and beautifully crafted jewelry. Every street was filled with unfamiliar languages, colorful clothing, and the sounds of bargaining. But Taxila was more than a marketplace. It had become one of the world's earliest centers of learning. Scholars, philosophers, doctors, and religious teachers gathered here to exchange knowledge. Students traveled hundreds of miles to study subjects ranging from medicine and mathematics to philosophy and astronomy. Within its walls, ideas crossed borders just as easily as merchants crossed continents. The Kushan rulers understood that an empire could become stronger by welcoming different cultures instead of suppressing them. Across their vast territories lived people with different languages, traditions, and beliefs. Buddhist monks, Hindu priests, followers of ancient Iranian religions, and communities influenced by Greek culture all lived side by side. Rather than forcing uniformity, the Kushans allowed diversity to flourish. This atmosphere encouraged merchants to settle, craftsmen to share their skills, and travelers to feel secure. Artistic styles blended naturally as Greek sculpting techniques mixed with Indian symbolism and Persian influences. Architecture, clothing, and everyday life reflected this remarkable cultural exchange. The Kushan Empire became a place where differences were not obstacles but sources of strength and prosperity. During the 2nd century CE, the Kushan Empire reached the height of its power under Emperor Kanishka. Historians remember him as one of the empire's greatest rulers. His leadership expanded Kushan influence across northern India, Central Asia, and parts of present-day Pakistan and Afghanistan. More importantly, he strengthened the trade routes that connected east and west. Caravans carrying valuable goods crossed Kushan lands every day, bringing wealth into the empire through commerce rather than constant conquest. Kanishka invested in roads, cities, and public works that made travel safer and more efficient. Under his rule, prosperity spread throughout the kingdom, and the Kushan Empire became one of the richest and most influential powers along the Silk Road. One of Kanishka's greatest contributions was his support for Buddhism. Although Buddhism had originated centuries earlier in India, it expanded dramatically during the Kushan period. Buddhist monks traveled alongside merchants, carrying sacred texts and teachings across mountains, deserts, and valleys. Monasteries were established along important trade routes, providing travelers with food, shelter, and places for study. These monasteries also became centers for preserving knowledge and translating religious writings into new languages. As trade flourished, Buddhist ideas reached Central Asia and eventually China, where they continued to spread for centuries. Through peaceful exchange rather than military conquest, the Kushan Empire helped shape one of the world's major religious traditions. The Kushans also left a lasting mark on art and culture. Their artists blended Greek realism with Indian religious traditions, creating what historians now call Greco-Buddhist art. For the first time, the Buddha was widely portrayed in human form, with detailed robes, calm expressions, and lifelike features. Kushan gold coins reflected the empire's remarkable diversity, displaying rulers alongside symbols and deities from Greek, Persian, Indian, and local traditions. These coins traveled thousands of kilometers, carrying the empire's influence far beyond its borders. For nearly 2 centuries, the Kushans stood at the center of one of history's greatest networks of trade and cultural exchange. Yet even as prosperity reached its peak, powerful rivals were beginning to emerge beyond the horizon, and the empire's golden age would soon face its greatest challenge. For generations, the Kushan Empire had prospered by controlling key sections of the Silk Road. But history is never still. To the west, a new power was rising, the Sasanian Empire. Founded in the 3rd century CE, the Sasanians quickly became one of the strongest kingdoms in the region. They sought to control the same valuable trade routes that had enriched the Kushans for decades. As their influence expanded eastward, competition over trade and territory intensified. What had once been a peaceful flow of merchants and caravans increasingly became a struggle for influence. The Kushans now faced an opponent determined to reshape the balance of power across Asia. Pressure came not only from outside the empire but also from within. Governing such a vast territory was becoming increasingly difficult. Local rulers gained more independence, and maintaining control over distant provinces required enormous resources. Some trade routes became less secure as regional conflicts disrupted travel. Merchants who once moved freely began seeking alternative paths to avoid danger and uncertainty. With fewer caravans passing through its cities, tax revenues declined, weakening the empire's economy. The very network that had made the Kushans wealthy was beginning to change, and the empire struggled to adapt to a rapidly shifting world. As the years passed, the Kushan Empire gradually lost territory. Western regions came under Sasanian influence, while new kingdoms emerged in other parts of South Asia. Rather than collapsing in a single dramatic event, the empire slowly fragmented. Some Kushan rulers continued governing smaller territories, but their authority no longer stretched across the vast lands they had once controlled. Great cities that had thrived on international commerce experienced slower growth as trade patterns evolved. Although daily life continued for many people, the Kushans were no longer the dominant force connecting east and west, yet the decline of political power did not erase the Kushans' influence. The roads they protected continued carrying merchants, travelers, and ideas across continents. Buddhist monasteries founded during their rule remained active, welcoming pilgrims and preserving knowledge. Artistic traditions that blended Greek, Persian, Central Asian, and Indian influences continued inspiring generations of sculptors and painters. The empire's gold coins, architecture, and cultural achievements survived long after its rulers had faded from history. Even as borders changed, the legacy of the Kushans continued traveling along the Silk Road through culture rather than conquest. Perhaps the Kushan Empire's greatest achievement was never the land it ruled or the wealth it collected. Its true legacy was connection. It linked civilizations that might otherwise have remained strangers to one another. Through trade, religions spread peacefully across Asia. New artistic styles emerged from cultural exchange, and knowledge moved between scholars from distant lands. The Kushans proved that an empire could shape history not only through military victories but also by creating opportunities for cooperation and discovery. Although its political power eventually faded, its impact on the ancient world was only beginning to be understood. Kushan Empire began to fade from political power. Its influence continued to travel across Asia. The roads it had protected remained busy with merchants carrying silk from China, spices from India, precious stones from Central Asia, and luxury goods from the Roman world. Every caravan that crossed these ancient routes carried more than merchandise. They carried stories, languages, inventions, religious beliefs, and new ways of thinking. In many ways, the Kushans had helped create one of the earliest examples of globalization, where distant civilizations became connected through peaceful exchange rather than conquest. The cities that flourished under Kushan rule did not disappear overnight. Markets continued to welcome traders from many cultures, while local craftsmen preserved artistic traditions that had developed during the empire's golden age. Sculptors continued producing remarkable works that blended Greek realism with Indian religious symbolism. Architects borrowed ideas from Persia, Central Asia, and India to create buildings unlike those found anywhere else. These cultural achievements survived long after the empire itself had weakened, influencing generations that followed. Perhaps the greatest symbol of the Kushans' legacy can still be found in the ancient monasteries scattered along the Silk Road. These peaceful centers welcomed travelers regardless of where they came from. Merchants rested beside monks, scholars copied valuable manuscripts, and students learned philosophy, astronomy, medicine, and literature. These monasteries became places where knowledge was carefully preserved and shared. Without them, many important ideas might never have reached distant civilizations. Archaeologists continue to uncover traces of this remarkable empire. Excavations across Afghanistan, Pakistan, northern India, and Central Asia have revealed magnificent statues, beautifully crafted gold coins, ancient temples, and thriving cities that once stood at the center of international trade. Every discovery helps historians better understand how the Kushans connected East and West during one of history's most important periods of cultural exchange. The Kushan gold coins are especially fascinating. Unlike many rulers of the ancient world, Kushan kings placed symbols from several different cultures on their currency. Greek gods appeared alongside Persian deities and Indian religious figures. These coins reflected the empire's remarkable diversity and showed that the Kushans embraced many traditions rather than promoting only one. Merchants accepted these coins across vast distances because they trusted the stability of the Kushan economy. This willingness to welcome different cultures became one of the empire's greatest strengths. Instead of fearing foreign influences, the Kushans encouraged cooperation. They understood that every traveler, merchant, artist, and scholar contributed something valuable to society. Their cities became places where ideas moved as freely as goods, creating innovations that shaped Asia for centuries. Even today, historians continue to study the Kushan Empire because it demonstrates how trade can transform civilizations. Roads built for commerce became highways for culture, religion, science, and diplomacy. The Silk Road was never simply about silk. It was about people meeting one another, sharing knowledge, and building connections across thousands of kilometers. At the center of much of that exchange stood the Kushans, quietly shaping world history in ways that are only now receiving the recognition they deserve. Yet despite these remarkable achievements, the Kushan Empire is rarely mentioned alongside the great civilizations of history. When people think of the ancient world, they often remember Rome, Han China, or the Persian empires. The Kushans are frequently overlooked, even though they served as the vital link connecting these powerful civilizations. Their strength did not come from ruling the largest territory or fielding the biggest armies. Instead, it came from their ability to unite people through commerce, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. The Silk Road was never simply a route for merchants. It became a pathway for ideas that reshaped entire societies. Paper-making techniques, artistic traditions, religious philosophies, agricultural knowledge, and scientific discoveries gradually spread across continents through the movement of ordinary travelers. Every caravan carried not only valuable goods but also stories, beliefs, inventions, and traditions that found new homes in distant lands. The Kushans recognized the importance of protecting this exchange, creating an environment where people from different cultures could meet peacefully and learn from one another. One of the empire's greatest contributions was demonstrating that prosperity could be built through cooperation. By protecting trade routes, supporting growing cities, and allowing diverse communities to flourish, the Kushans created an economy that benefited merchants, craftsmen, scholars, and travelers alike. Their success showed that an empire's influence could extend far beyond its borders without relying solely on military conquest. Their greatest victories were measured in the ideas they helped spread, the relationships they encouraged, and the opportunities they created for millions of people across Asia. Today, archaeologists continue to uncover temples, sculptures, inscriptions, coins, and ancient cities that reveal new chapters of the Kushan story. Each discovery reminds us that history is never truly complete. Many civilizations that once shaped the world remain hidden beneath the earth, waiting for their stories to be told. As new evidence emerges, historians gain a deeper understanding of how interconnected the ancient world really was. The legacy of the Kushan Empire survives in the spread of Buddhism across Asia, in artistic styles that blended cultures from east and west, and in the enduring idea that trade can unite people separated by vast distances. Their influence reached far beyond the lifetime of the empire itself, leaving a mark on civilizations that continued to grow long after Kushan rule had ended. The story of the Kushans reminds us that history is not only written by the most famous empires. Sometimes the civilizations that quietly connect the world leave the deepest and longest-lasting impact. At the crossroads of Asia, the Kushan Empire became the bridge between East and West, helping goods, knowledge, cultures, and beliefs travel across continents. Though their name may not be as widely remembered today, their contribution to human history remains extraordinary. Every journey along the Silk Road carried a small part of their legacy, connecting distant peoples and shaping the world in ways that can still be seen centuries later. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the forgotten story of the Kushan Empire, consider subscribing for more documentaries exploring the hidden histories of civilizations that changed our world. Until next time, keep exploring the past, because history always has another story waiting to be discovered.